This meeting is now being recorded.
Hi there, this is Tony Crossman speaking. I'm with Thales eSecurity, and I'm very happy to be here to present to you today on the topic of how to sell and position Oracle Thales encryption key management for availability and compliance. That's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but we'll break it down into bite-sized chunks and make it very digestible, and show you how this solution from Oracle and Thales protects our customers from data breach notification laws and regulations using Thales's hardware security modules and Oracle's advanced security transparent data encryption offering. And in essence, any customer using an Oracle database today is a potential target for this type of solution, and there is a good opportunity to upsell customers to Oracle 11RG and advanced security so that they really can take advantage of and achieve the compliance benefits that this solution offers. So in this presentation, I'm going to be talking to you about, I'll talk to you a bit about data breach notification to give you the context of why the solution is so powerful and what it's mitigating and helping our customers with. And I'll look at the integration between Thales and Oracle. It's very important to understand that and the value proposition and why it helps you upsell to Oracle 11GR2 and advanced security option. We'll talk about centralized key management and backup and recovery and how this all reduces the cost of ownership. And we'll talk a little bit about the cryptography that's behind this at a high level, because it's important to understand the context and where it comes in. I'll also be referring to standards of due care, which is really an evolving terminology that's new in the market now. That it's evolved. It's an evolution of the term best practices, and we'll talk about that further in a moment. But first, what I'd like to do is, by way of this slide, just spend a moment introducing you to Thales eSecurity, who I work for. Thales eSecurity is an organization that's been around for about 40 years now in the business of security, a very strong pedigree in the security space. It is a business line within the much larger Thales Group, which is an $18 billion company. Thales eSecurity provides an end-to-end security offering that spans the entire value chain of the information security domain. Thales eSecurity is the #1 vendor for interbank transaction security, where approximately 80% of the world's banks and financial institutions use our security offerings, our hardware security offerings in their infrastructure to protect themselves and achieve compliance benefits. Our products include general purpose hardware security modules, payments processing hardware security modules, data link encryption, and professional services. Thales eSecurity's business spans all the verticals you can think of, and including large enterprises in all the verticals, and government and civilian agencies, both defense as well as non-defense. So let's push on here and start to dig into the subject matter at hand. And let's talk about compliance. I think it's important we give you the context of compliance because it's very relevant to the rest of the presentation and the value that Oracle brings and Thales brings and gives us the opportunity to really push the strength of the Oracle solution and Thales together. So compliance. It's about protecting our customers from data breach notification laws and regulations, PCI DSS being one of the well-known regulations, for example, industry regulations around credit card processing. There are also numerous data breach notification laws that have been enacted across the states here. Approximately 48 of the 50 US states have enacted data breach notification laws, as have other regions around the world. And let's go back about 10 years. 10 years ago, there were no such standards or laws or regulations, and you very rarely heard of any data breach, data disclosure in the media. It was very hard to find such things. That's because there was no requirement on an organization, if they lost data or data was stolen, for them to notify the individuals whose data was lost or stolen. However, 10 years ago, that all changed with California introducing their first data breach notification law as a trendsetter. And that required an organization to notify an individual if their data was lost or compromised. And what was the effect of that? Well, if we step forward in time, and now we understand that most of the states have this type of law in place, the effect is when they started to notify people of breaches, it became public domain. It was in the media. And so today you see, every day in the press, you can find reports about data being lost, whether it's somebody losing a laptop from the local healthcare office with patient information, whether it's a breach of marketing information or credit card information with a bank. These breaches are all over the place, and that's the result of these data breach notification laws. And what's also important is that we want to mitigate our customers' exposure under these laws, the fines and the lawsuits that may ensue as a result. And the way to do this is to take our data out of is to take that data out of scope. What we mean here is we want to help our customers, our Oracle customers, to take their data out of scope, whereby we minimize where sensitive data is exposed within the IT infrastructure. Okay, that means auditors can see and accept that there is sufficient protection in place and that standards of due care have been observed. This reduces the cost of compliance, the cost of audit. It increases the security and obviously lowers the risk. So the goal here and what Oracle offers us is the opportunity to provide our customers with a solution that takes takes a part of their infrastructure out of scope when it comes to data breach notification laws and regulatory compliance such as PCI DSS. And let's just delve a little bit here. I took some shots from some of the media publicity around some recent breaches just to emphasize the point about the breaches and that they really are very high profile. Here earlier this year, Epsilon, who's an online marketing agency that works with large organizations like Dell, Barclays Bank, Target, Verizon, and so on, had millions of their records stolen, which were email addresses and customer names of these various clients that they have, such as Citibank, Best Buy, and so on. Obviously a very major data breach, and obviously some of the data was not correctly protected. And let's skip ahead here, and just to emphasize the point, DigiNotar, a certificate authority in Holland, earlier this year was compromised by an Iranian hacker, probably from the Iranian government, whereby they were able to generate fake certificates and impersonate Google, who was one of DigiNotar's customers, and consequently Google accounts were compromised. Well, the result on DigiNotar is that they're now out of business, and obviously that's the ultimate effect of a data breach, but and we want to minimize that impact for our customers. And so let's first, in terms of getting to that point and understanding that, let's look at the generic IT infrastructure here. This illustrates the generic IT infrastructure, this slide, in layers. And at the outermost layer, you can see people who connect into the organization, such as teleworkers, contractors perhaps, partners. And then you move into the organization layer by layer, where you have desktops inside the organization, laptops, and so on. And then you reach the core of the organization's IT infrastructure, which is where the databases lie. And database and storage, that represents, for most organizations, their crown jewels. That's where we can store our intellectual property, our customer information, our credit card numbers, and so on. And we need to protect that. Now, in protecting IT infrastructure, there's not any one solution that's going to protect the entire infrastructure. You need to have a holistic approach to security to protect your data at rest, data in motion, data in use. And this will require the use of, for example, firewalls, access controls, and identity management, virus scanners, and the like. This is defense in depth. But really the focus of this presentation, as you know, is Oracle and Thales, and it's Oracle database. So we're really focusing here in the core. How do we protect the storage? How do we take that storage and the data in that storage out of scope so that, and the backups, so that there's no risk under data breach notification laws if the data is lost or stolen. And we'll now start to unravel that for you and see the value of all that we can offer all those customers that use Oracle today. Excuse me. Okay, so a big part of the equation here is cryptography. Cryptography is a widely accepted method of protecting information. It is used very widely today in web services, for example, SSL. Every time you go online and purchase something, it's cryptography. Digital rights management, protecting documents, identity management, public key infrastructure, smart cards. These all use cryptography, and there are many other applications, such as digital signing, that use cryptography. And it's just being used in at an ever-increasing rate. And why is cryptography so important and ideally suited to Oracle and Thales' solution and prevention in general? It's because when you encrypt something, if that encrypted data is lost or stolen, the data is rendered unreadable. That means nobody can look at the data unless they have the key to unlock that data. So it takes your data out of scope. All right, that's very important to understand. And this is what Oracle Database does along with Thales hardware security modules. It provides a way of taking the data out of scope, particularly when it goes into backup and archival. And it puts our customers in compliance and removes their risk profile under the data breach notification laws. A very powerful solution. So don't take my word for it. Excuse me, errors with the slide rotation here. Don't take my word for it. Here's a survey from Poneman Institute earlier this year of information security auditors. And they really look to cryptography to protect and offer strong protection for the solutions within the enterprise, to protect the information assets within an enterprise. So the impact here for us, talking about Oracle and Thales, is look for Oracle databases that are deployed. They're all over the place. And we can upsell them to Oracle 11GR2 and Advanced Security from Oracle, and integrate that with Thales hardware security modules. So these auditors will be advising our customers, and they will be advising them that they need to use cryptography. So this isn't going to be something that's alien to our customers. Our customers will should know about cryptography. The point being that Thales and Oracle offer a wonderful solution that involves cryptography, and what I'm giving you here is a use case that deploys two Oracle databases in this instance. In the bottom left you see here, and a hardware security module from Thales. Something's gone wrong with the presentation. Excuse me, we had a problem with the presentation rolling forward here. Okay, excuse me for that. This animated slide seems to be moving on its own, so please do excuse me. So we have the Thales hardware security module on a databases. We can have any number of databases. I chose to select 2 here. And the point being that what we want to do is back up the database onto tape and ship that tape away to some secure storage on a truck, which is a very common scenario. You've probably all heard of tapes being lost on a truck, and then someone, a thief or a villain, intercepting that tape and stealing the information. And what that means, so the point being here, if the data is encrypted, it's out of scope. The villain, the thief, cannot read the data. It's rendered unreadable. And the Thales hardware security module here is centralizing the key management of the databases, where the databases are encrypted and the tapes are encrypted. So let's push on to the next slide here. And what this slide does is really reinforce the previous slide by looking at it from a different point of view. The previous slide was the use case, or a use case. It could have equally have been a storage area network that we backed up onto and encrypted. And here we're looking at it from what's the problems the customer faces, and what does Oracle and Thales solve? Well, it's principally about backup, it's about operational, and it's about security. In backup, we need to make sure that the backups are encrypted. We need to have strong access controls so that not everybody can see the backups. And of course, if we encrypt, we solve that problem. Operationally, we need to know how keys are managed for the database encryption. We need to know where the tables are that are being encrypted, and we need to understand how we can centralize the key management for these databases, because if you have many, many databases in a large infrastructure, they all need keys, and manually managing those is difficult. And Oracle and Thales together allow you to centralize that management and offer operational advantage. And again, the security aspect, you know, is the solution we're deploying here, or the customer's deploying, does it meet these? Does it have the correct certification in place to meet the auditor's review of the infrastructure and provide strong compliance and therefore take us out of scope from a data breach notification point of view? And are we offering the highest level of security assurance for the solution? So let's dig a little deeper here and talk about 11GR2, the Oracle database. This is, again, I can't emphasize this enough, an opportunity to upsell to 11GR2 and also to sell the option Advanced Security. Advanced Security includes something called Transparent Data Encryption. Transparent Data Encryption is really, as its name suggests, it's really very cool. It allows you to encrypt data going into the database and decrypt it coming out without any change whatsoever to the applications and solutions that rely on that database. This is very important point. So you can take an existing infrastructure that's running and deploy the database encryption, gain all of the value of and the compliance benefits for the customer. And as I said, it's very good, because if the customer's running 10G, 9G, or even 8G database, and they really want to reap the benefits of strong compliance and minimizing their risk profile under data breach laws and regulations, then they really need to upgrade to 11GR2 and deploy advanced security with transparent data encryption. This is a great opportunity, and the market here really is the Oracle database market, which is very large. So there's somebody's got an Oracle database, it's storing sensitive information, it's an opportunity for us to sell into. Transparent data encryption. So you understand this a little better. As I said, transparent data encryption comes with the advanced security option that Oracle sell. And focusing on the bottom two tables here, transparent data encryption offers you the ability to, slide problems here. Okay, the column encryption allows you to encrypt columns in the table as shown here. So you can have a list of users and their credit card numbers, and you only want to encrypt the credit card number. Whereas on the right-hand column, you can encrypt the entire table of the data space, so all the information is encrypted. And the other important point about transparent data encryption is it simplifies the support and maintenance. Prior to transparent data encryption, which Oracle was the first in deploying and a leader, prior to that, there were third parties who would provide plugins that performed encryption and encryption management for you. And it was a problem for customers deploying these third-party solutions with the Oracle database because there were frequently incompatibilities when either one of the vendors updated or changed their software, and it became a very strong headache. And so Oracle has removed this headache and has integrated it tightly into the database for us and made it very simple, and also allowed us to plug in strong cryptographic support with industry-leading hardware security modules from Thales. Standards of due care. I briefly mentioned standards of due care earlier. This is very important. It's a new term in the industry, and it's an evolution of the best practices. Standards of due care, very simply put here, is the established best practices for applying cryptography and their tried and tested techniques. This is something that's recognized by auditors and security professionals. And these security professionals may be on staff with our customers, or they may be consultants to our customers. So why is it important? It's because not just do we achieve good security, we essentially achieve availability as well, i.e. backup, recovery, and accountability. All of these come together to bring us under the umbrella of standards of due care. And Oracle and Thales together, the engineered solution, provides standards of due care. So what are those standards of due care? At a high level, we'll discuss them here. It's about strong access controls, knowing where keys are that perform the cryptography, who or what is accessing them, what purpose is the key being used for, is it being used for the correct purpose, do we have strong dual controls implemented so no one person can subvert the system, and do we have strong authentication to the system so that, for example, a database administrator can't access the keys, and so we have a separate security administration. This is very important. Can we map policies, security policies of the customer to the deployment here of Oracle and Thales together? Backup and recovery. Obviously very important in a mission-critical application such as a database. Can we effectively back up and recover keys as well as the data? Obviously, if we lost the keys, you'd never be able to recover the data, and we need to make sure that there's a very strong and viable solution in place. How do we refresh and rotate keys? And then there's life cycle protection, knowing where the keys were generated, what strength those keys were, and that no sensitive key information is exposed outside of the Thales hardware security modules, for example, as plain text. When I say key information, I mean the keys that actually do the encryption. You need to protect those keys. And then, of course, all of this comes together with certification and standards. Is the solution that's being deployed meeting correct industry and government recognized standards and certifications such that, for example, auditors will recognize these standards and certifications as they audit the infrastructure, and then in turn that reduces your cost of audit and provide you with a much stronger solution in the infrastructure. The goal here is obviously, with good standards of due care, to take as much of the IT infrastructure out of scope as possible. And if you remember the use case we saw with the tape on the truck, that tape is taken out of scope. The tape itself is part of the IT infrastructure. It's part of the backup. But we took it out of scope because we used encryption and made it unreadable. Excuse me. I took a slide backwards by accident. Okay, implementing standards of due care. This is very good because we have 3 players in the space for compliance around databases: Oracle, Thales, and Envoy Data. Oracle is a leader in database security. Thales is a leader in hardware security, cryptographic security. And Envoy Data has a leadership position providing for Oracle solutions. And together, this is a very powerful partnership. So Oracle and Thales together have integrated a very powerful solution between Thales hardware security modules and the Oracle database that provide technically and operationally the highest standards of due care. A little bit more in terms of an overview of how these two fit together, Thales and Oracle. Oracle, as I said already, provides you the ability to natively encrypt and store keys and plug in third-party cryptographic devices, Thales hardware security module. It also has very strong user access controls with the Oracle Vault. And when you add Thales hardware security modules into the picture with the integration, you find that you can only achieve, for example, these standards, FIPS 140-2 Level 3 and Common Criteria EAL4+, with our hardware security modules. These are not standards that you can achieve with software solutions alone. You can only do it with a hardware solution. So now you start to see the value add and how Thales and Oracle together provide a very tight integrated approach. And of course, using the hardware security module, as you saw in the illustration earlier, centralizes the key management across any number of database instances. So this provides you with the highest level of security assurance, and it aids with meeting PCI compliance and data breach notification law compliance. In effect, if the data is lost, it's encrypted, and it's out of scope, so you're no longer liable. You don't have to notify anybody. And again, this is, and I emphasize again, this is an opportunity for us to upsell the Oracle 11G R2 database and advanced security in order to have our customers be fully compliant with laws and regulations. Another snapshot from the Ponemon Institute survey earlier this year. Almost 50% of the IT security auditors surveyed said that they would recommend hardware security modules instead of software, which reinforces my previous point. You can only achieve certain industry-recognized certifications, such as FIPS and Common Criteria, with the hardware security modules. You cannot do it with software alone. And I would expect in about 12 months, if they did this survey again, they would find that 46% number increased again as the awareness grows, and the fact that the PCI forum is in the process of drafting a new standard that will only increase the need for hardware security modules in the financial services and credit card processing space. In summary, the benefits with Thales: operational security and compliance, operational centralized key management across any number of databases, scalability, we can add, as I said, multiple databases, and we can have multiple hardware security modules working together for redundancy and load balancing. And we have very strong disaster recovery and archival capabilities that are very simple to follow, which really mirror those of Oracle. So it's really a very powerful joint solution we have. Security benefits, obviously, the benefits of hardware protection isolated from the database administrator and other users. Separation of duties, where again we have special security administrators, and we have the ability to comply with our customers' security policies, which they would need to implement to meet compliance. And we have a high level of security assurance that you can only achieve with hardware. And of course, this is somewhat related to the compliance benefits, where we obtain FIPS 140-2 Level 3 and Common Criteria EAL4+ with hardware security modules alone. And all of this comes together to reduce our cost of compliance. In terms of uncovering the customer need, many customers and prospects that you talk to who have the Oracle database, you will find that they probably have multiple database vendors deployed. You'll probably find them with Microsoft SQL Server, for example, as well. And in fact, Thales eSecurity does provide a solution, a similar solution for Microsoft SQL Server to perform database encryption. And so we're looking for prospects and customers that have Oracle databases. They have PCI compliance drivers or other data breach notification law compliance drivers, general intellectual property protection drivers. It may be healthcare. Look for compliance and regulatory drivers. And also think about and ask them about what data is being stored in their database. For example, credit card numbers, social security numbers, personally identifiable information, PII, medical records, intellectual property, human resource records, and the list could go on for quite some time. But the point being, probe around for what type of information is stored, and then from that you'll see if it's sensitive information. And then what's the level of protection that's required for this data? What regulation and laws do they need to comply with? It relates really to the second bullet. Are they looking to be PCI compliant? Do they need to be PCI compliant? And so do they have credit card numbers in their database, for example? And then are they aware if there's a data theft or loss from their database? Are they aware that they're liable? Do they know what regulations are going to be coming down on them if they're not in compliance? It's amazing to me how many large businesses, even today, are not fully appreciative of the laws and regulations that they need to comply with to minimize their risk profile under those laws and regulations. So it's always a good idea to probe around these questions and these themes. And again, Oracle database is the common thing here. If they have an Oracle database or they're a prospect for an Oracle database, then this is a solution that this is the type of solution we should be discussing with them. In terms of the industry areas or verticals, really the three sweet spots are government, financial services, and retail. Large enterprises, medium enterprises in general are also good targets, but these are the three sweet spots. Both Thales and Oracle do have their products deployed in all verticals. So in terms of these sweet spots, obviously government maintains lots of data about its citizens, and their privacy is paramount. They obviously, in some cases, take credit card numbers for their services, so PCI compliance is another thing to think about there. And also, particularly with government and financial services, you will find they will always ask, when they're deploying hardware security modules, are they FIPS certified? And the only way we can get the FIPS certification with this Oracle Thales solution is to deploy the Thales hardware security module along with Oracle. And in the retail space, of course, we have credit card numbers, and we have customer information, such as buying patterns of customers. I would imagine that's sensitive information in the database that they wouldn't want compromised, and consumers wouldn't want their buying habits put out into the general internet at large and compromised. This is interesting to me, this slide. Decision makers, chief security officers, chief information officers. Well, they're very much about risk, right? Minimizing their risk. And you can think of them as the risk managers. And database administrators, they manage, they own the databases, but they may not be as security-centric as the CSO or CIO. And IT managers, who generally manage the infrastructure, will obviously have an interest. These are three groups of stakeholders. And from a traditional sense, Oracle is very much related to the database administrators. Very important, obviously, if you're selling databases. Traditionally, Thales, with its security pedigree, has had the attention of the chief security officers, CIO, and IT managers who are into risk and security. And when you put Oracle and Thales together, along with Envoy Data, then you really cover all the stakeholders, and this forms a very powerful engagement with our customer and prospects. We have all the stakeholders covered. With that,